So I realized after I did my last YouTube video on Red Dead, my review of the rolls, there's a few things in particular about the Moonshiner that I forgot to mention. This is mostly because it was already coming up on 50 minutes and I was feeling a little rushed, so I kind of wrapped it up. And then later I realized there's a couple things I didn't say. First off, here's just a quick tip. If you play the Moonshiner, and I mentioned earlier that I like to make the Wild Creek Moonshine, which is a 3-star strong moonshine, because of the ingredients, and I thought that of the 3-star ingredients, that was the one that was going to be the easiest to find. There's another reason for doing so, though. It is also the only one that no matter when you show up, there's always a buyer for it. And I made some of the other 3-star moonshines, the Agarita, and I can't remember what the other one is. I only made the it's a Spice Island, I think. So I've made those and gone back to my shack because production was complete, and it turns out that there was no buyer. Sometimes what you can do is wait until the cycle resets. The cycle resets, I think, once every hour and a half or 2 hours or so. But I've even done that before, where I've waited and then the next cycle I still didn't have a buyer. The Wild Creek Moonshine, on the other hand, you always have a buyer. So not only do you always have a buyer, has the easiest ingredients to find, and it sells for the exact same price as the other ones too. So I don't see any reason why I would ever consider again making the other 3-star moonshines. The Wild Creek is the way to go. And like I said in that one, if the collector roll gets kind of nerfed, or even if it's changed and it's hard to find the cedar plum or the creek plums, I'll probably go to the Evergreen Moonshine, which is a 2-star moonshine. It'll be $20 less that I make, but it'll still be worth doing, and it doesn't have any collectible ingredients. It'll be easy to find. I also didn't mention, I forgot to, that the Moonshiner roll outfits are mostly pretty terrible. The first 2 have big aprons on them that are part of the top, so you can't wear them without looking like you're either a waiter or, I mean, you look like you're the one making the moonshine. It's just kind of strange. I don't know why you'd ever wear those. The second 2, on the other hand, don't have that look to them. They just look like really over-the-top dressy outfits. So they're okay if you want a really super over-the-top dressy outfit that kind of looks like, you would go meet some European royalty or something like that. But they're a little strange. But they're unusual because there's nothing else like them in the game. So I mean, I guess in that sense they're not bad, but man, they look really strange. Really strange. There's also some other kind of cool stuff that are associated with the Moonshiner. The special hat that you can get with it is very tall top hat. It kind of has I don't know that it was the intention, but it kind of has the look of a hat that a lot of the Indians wore as they had kind of become pseudo-assimilated into Western civilization, at least in some of their clothing, and they wore, kind of Western clothes, but they wore them differently than we did. Like they would just have, here's a random vest and a random top hat and a random, whatever, along with their moccasins and buckskin pants and, other stuff. It kind of has that kind of look to it. I'm not quite sure what I would ever use it for. I bought one of them. I might use it with the top Moonshiner, or the Tier 4 Moonshiner roll outfit, just to make a super over-the-top dressy outfit, but I don't know. Then again, maybe I won't. There's also a monocle that the Moonshiner has, which is pretty cool. I use that. For whatever reason, I like to put some kind of eyewear on, and I do. Unfortunately, I started the game a little late, and I missed the first Outlaw Pass, and I really like the steel spectacles that came with the first Outlaw Pass, but can't get it. But there are some brass spectacles, and the steel spectacles look like just regular glasses. The brass spectacles, on the other hand, have no ear bars, so it's just the glasses with one, and I guess they pinch on your nose. I guess I'm not quite sure what holds them up, but they stay in place. Obviously, it's not real life, so they stay there. my characters usually wear those, and I'm not quite sure why I started doing that. I wear glasses in real life, and maybe that's why I kind of related more to the idea of a character who wears glasses. But if I don't want to wear those for some reason, then I've got a monocle, I've got the balloonist goggles, I've got an eye patch. I'd like to get the bounty hunter eye patch too. But I like to wear something because I think it kind of is just an interesting look. So there's some other cool stuff that comes with the Moonshiner. There is, however, unlike for the other three, there's no camp theme, there's no Crips outfit that is associated with this role. And probably that is because this doesn't really involve Crips, and it's kind of you got your own separate property, the Moonshine Shack, and you've got, Maggie and Marcel, which are the, different characters that you interact with in the Moonshine Shack. That's part of it. So it kind of makes sense that it really doesn't have anything to do with your camp or with Crips. But, it's worth noting the other three had a camp theme and a Crips outfit that was tied to those themes to go with it. This one does not. Another quick notion on the Moonshiner, the horse, and it's called the Norfolk Roadster, which is actually a British horse. It is extinct now, but a bunch of them did come to America, and I don't mean to say they're extinct in the sense that they were all shot or something or killed. They were all bred out, and the Norfolk Roadster or Norfolk Trotter is what it seems like it was actually more commonly called, but it's the same breed, is the basis through mixing of a number of breeds that are American breeds that were commonplace later. So they do there's some anachronisms in terms of the guns and the horses and breeds and whatnot that they use, but they are usually real breeds and real guns and whatnot that sometimes they don't quite fit the timing of the game, but they're close enough. So the Norfolk Roadster was a real horse. It was again usually called the Norfolk Trotter, but it's the same thing. It comes, as all the horses do, in 3 tiers, and each tier has 2 different colors. The top 2 colors are kind of a brown and white piebald, which I didn't get because it looks too much like my Criollo. The other one is kind of a brownish brindle with a whiter face, which I did get, even though I don't love that color. But at least it was different than any other horse that I had, so I got it. And this is a very popular horse. It doesn't have super high level of health. It's got about a little less than 3/4 of a full ring, but it has almost a full stamina and ring, and it has pretty good speed. It's only 1 short of being maximum, and pretty good acceleration. So it's a really popular horse. I kind of tend to not love mine. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's because I just don't like either of the colors that they had available, and I just don't love the look of it. But there's no reason from a stat perspective why I wouldn't like it. It is a very good horse. Again, there's the mid-tier, the lower tier too, are a little bit more common colors, but common in terms of what you would expect horses to have, but not common in terms of people use them, because nobody really buys mid-tier and lower tier if they can wait just a little bit and get the top tier, right? I've come to the conclusion, though, that it doesn't matter too much what horse you have, and I don't know that the very first horse, not the scrawny nag, but other than that, the very first horse I had, which was just a silver Kentucky Saddler, a pretty basic horse, was really, in terms of actual performance, was really that much worse than these kind of more elite, high quality, high level, and very expensive horses that I've had since then. It has, the horses have a number of stats, 4 of which are kind of readily available: the stamina and health, and the speed and acceleration. There's a 5th stat, which is not readily available and usually varies by breed, although some people will say, and I don't know if this is true because other people do not say this, that there is some variation within a breed or within a color of a breed. Really, I think what happens is if you have any horse and you have it bonded fully and you have the Nacogdoches saddle with the hooded stirrups, you will do okay. The speed and acceleration actually seem to make very little difference in terms of horse performance unless you are literally performing in some kind of race, which doesn't really happen at all that I can tell. And I have seen some people have run some test runs and they ran their horses along a prescribed route from Valentine to Saint Denis to the bridge at the beginning of Saint Denis, which is a pretty long run, a very significant portion of the map. And the test that I saw did it with a very fast horse, had speed, maxed out at 10. Medium speed horse, I think its speed was about 7, and a relatively slow horse had a speed of like 3, I think, or something, which for a bonded horse is really slow. It's even slow for a non-bonded horse. It's just pretty slow. But when they did this, they found that, and it took 5.5 minutes, almost 6 minutes, but the difference between those 3 horses was minimal. I think there was only 2 seconds difference between the fast one and the medium one, and there was only another 3 or 4 seconds between the medium and the slow. So even between the slow and the fast horse, there was only about a 5 or 6 second difference on their arrival on this very long run that took over 5.5 minutes. It was a 6 second difference. So I've kind of decided that speed and acceleration don't matter. Stamina matters the most of all the stats, in my opinion, because you want to be able to run your horse without having to stop and pat it a lot so it gets its stamina ring back, or give it, tonics so its stamina comes up. Now, a big part of this is having the Nacogdoches saddle with the hooded stirrups, because you put that on, it not only increases your speed, it increases your acceleration, and the stamina drain is ridiculous. I actually think it's so good that it's probably a glitch, and it's not supposed to be that good, but they haven't ever fixed it, so maybe I'm wrong. But it's so good that it makes any other saddle irrelevant and, beside the point. It also means that although the stamina is a super important stat, its importance is a little bit lesser if you have that, because you've got to do a really long run for it to come into play. And if you have a fully bonded horse, as you're running, you can hit your L3 to pat your horse while you're running, and it will actually increase your stamina back up. Now, what I do a lot of times is when I'm running somewhere is I will start the run, then I'll put it in cinematic mode so I don't have to sit there and hold on to my controller, and it'll make the AI run. So I can't increase the stamina that way, but it really isn't a problem anymore now that I have the Nacogdoches saddle. I very rarely actually run out of stamina on these big runs. It does make maybe more of a difference if I'm doing a mission where I have to run my horse for a while, but that's not a big deal. Health is also very important. That's a stat that actually matters. If you fall off a cliff or your horse gets shot or something, it would be nice for your horse to be able to take a good 2, 3, 4 hits before, it's out rather than 1. So I think having a good health stat is important. Having a good health, good stamina is important. Speed and acceleration don't matter as much. And of course, the personality or bravery or whatever you want to call it is super important. And you don't want a horse that's super skittish and is going to buck you every time it gets a little bit spooked. You want a horse that you can be in gunfights with and it's going to, be calm about it. You want a horse that, you run by a bear or a cougar or an alligator, that it's not going to completely freak out. And all horses will to some degree, but you want a horse that can handle that better. Some horses are notorious for just dumping you right away, and the Arabians, the white Arabian in particular, because you could get that in story mode right away. You'd run up there to Lake Isabella and catch it, and you'd get it for free, but it was supposed to be a really good horse because it was really fast and had these high stats, but its bravery was absurd. It would buck you all the time. So to me, that's a more important stat than most too, where I've decided that I don't think speed and acceleration really matter. Which means that I've started riding Little John a lot more, my Cladruber, who is my slowest of my horses that I have now. His speed is 7 with the saddle and stirrups that I have, which is a medium speed. I've also, I think I have 2 stable stalls that are empty. Maybe I even have 3, but I know for sure I have 2. And I'm saving one for the whatever new roll horse we get. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm sure I will buy it. And I want to get another horse too, and I'm not sure what to get. And I kind of had my eye maybe on a White Arabian because it would be pretty different than all the other horses I have. Kind of had my eye on a Missouri Foxtrotter, although they're, stat-wise almost identical to the Criollo. And I have a Criollo. I also have a Missouri Foxtrotter in single player that I've used a lot. I'm thinking, though, about getting the Perlino Andalusian, which is not a top-level horse. It's kind of a mid-tier horse, and it costs about $550, which is almost the same as the mid-tier roll horses. But it, I think it completely maxes out health and almost maxes out stamina. It's relatively slow. It starts out at 3 and gets up to 5. I think maybe with the saddle I can get it up to about where my Cladruber is, maybe. I don't know. It seems like that would be comparable to the horses I like. Plus, I like the look of it. It's kind of got this blonde look. So I'm thinking about getting a female Andalusian, a Perlino one, and calling it Maid Marian. It's the only female horse I have, but Maid Marian's also the only female Robin Hood character of any note. So that will be the only one I need. Then when I get my next roll horse, geez, I'm starting to have to dig the bottom of the barrel a little bit on Robin Hood character names. I guess I haven't used the Sheriff of Nottingham or Prince John or King Richard. Sheriff of Nottingham doesn't even have a name. I would just have to call it Sheriff of Nottingham. So I don't know. We'll see what I do with those. But I probably will get Maid Marian here sooner rather than later because I think I've kind of decided that's where I want to go. And it's interesting to me that that's kind of the way to do it is it doesn't matter. You don't need to get the top tier horses. In fact, I kind of wish now that I maybe had not gotten the top tier horses for some of my other rolls, just because I like the look of some of the mid tier ones. The Breton has the Seal Brown and the Dun Grullo. I love the look of both of those. Whereas I like well enough the look of the top tier, but I don't like them as much as I like the mid tier. And the Cladruber comes with a gold cremello at the mid tier. It looks exactly like Buell with, the profile of a Cladruber, the nose and stuff. I would, when it's fully bonded, I think, be missing a point or two of stamina and health each, 1 point each, I think. And that's basically it. I mean, they would be pretty indistinguishable. I've kind of decided that it doesn't matter too much what horse you have, and the differences between them not only are minimal, but in actual play, you barely even notice them if you do at all. I do think having a horse with a brave personality is important, and I like having a horse with a pretty good stamina and health ring. But other than they don't need to be completely full, and other than that, I don't know what else there is to care about on the horses, quite honestly. And some of the horses I have, don't necessarily have super high health. The Turkoman has, and maybe I have this backwards, I think it actually has full health, but it only has about 3/4 stamina. The Norfolk Roadster and the Criollo are their health isn't super high. Their stamina is pretty good. So, I don't know. I don't think there's as much difference between the top and the mid-tier horses as all that. And even the low-tier horses aren't that bad. And you'd really just run around playing free roam and even most of the missions and stuff, they won't matter. If you're playing one of the race mode showdowns or something, then you want to have a really top-tier horse. So maybe it's nice to have one super fast horse if you play those kind of things, and I've never played one, I really don't have any interest in them, but if I were really into those, then I would almost certainly get, I would save up the gold for a Black Arabian probably, or if not, I would at least, ride a White Arabian for the race modes only. But I wouldn't use them for anything else. I think something with a really high stamina and, decent, is not going to get spooked is good for just kind of riding around in free roam. Something with good health and probably good stamina for that matter, and is also less likely to be spooked, is good for your missions, your bounty hunters, for clearing hideouts, for doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's how it goes. I'm going to have a 6th horse, I think, here soon, and then I'll get to work on bonding it. And I think other than that, I think that covers the Moonshiner. There's some other stuff I kind of wanted to point out to you, just for the heck of it. There's a couple of guys that have YouTube channels, and there's Voog is one of them, VOOWG, and Voyager's Revenge is the other. And they have used Red Dead Redemption to make cinematic movies. And I'm not entirely sure how they do it. I mean, you can play to some degree in cinematic mode, and I think they do some of that, and they do a bunch of editing. They do a really good job. And Voyager's Revenge, they have different strengths and weaknesses. Voyager's Revenge, I think, is really good at the cinematic combat scenes, the cinematic action scenes, but his videos kind of tend to lack any story or context. It's just, an action scene. The other thing that he does is he goes really kind of all out in making kind of strange and bizarre outfits, because he has the mods. He can pull stuff off of NPCs. He can, add stuff that you can't actually wear in game in either story mode or online, either one. But he can do it in his modded version of the game, and so he has some very unique looking characters, or at the very least unique looking versions of Arthur and John. One of the things that he has discovered is that I had assumed that the role outfits, that a lot of the accoutrements that go with them were kind of just attached to them, and that's what made them look good. But it turns out they're not. They're just, the bandoliers are just bandoliers, same as any others. You can't wear them separately or separate them, but with the mods you can, because they are different items. And there's even glitches too, without even the mods. Even in like the PS4, there are glitches that occasionally allow you to exploit some of those. And so people have made these weird custom outfits that have the Carthage outfit bandolier on, for example, which normally you can only wear with the Carthage outfit. Or they have the Garwood coat without the rest of the Garwood outfit, which is a really great look. So Voyager's Revenge kind of does that. Plus he has really pretty good, cinematography, if you will. And I'm not quite sure how you do that, because, and both of these guys do this, but they, have a lot of scenes where you kind of see, elements of the setting, even there's just, here's a barn or a house, and it's kind of zoomed in as if it were a drone shot, and they set up the scene by showing these. And I don't know how they do that, but they look really good. Voog, or however you say it, on the other hand, he's really good at his cinematography too. But what he does that's really good is he's a natural storyteller, and all of his videos kind of they draw you in. And he's even done a bunch of videos, and these are just single player mode videos. And so he has either Arthur or John with outfits as suggested by his subscribers. They say, hey, build an outfit with these elements, and he does. But when he does, he somehow manages to create these little vignettes for this, and it's like a little character study or a little story. And even though it's Arthur or John, it feels like, it feels like another character. And here's the story of this character. He's also done some videos where he actually tells, little stories. Whereas Voyager's Revenge kind of shows, the stories from the game in the cinematic style often. What Voog has done is kind of tell his own stories, and there's a really interesting one, for example, which is obviously based on Indiana Jones, and it's just, you know, really great storytelling, for especially considering the medium, which is, you know, video captured out of a video game and then edited on, you know, video editing software aside from that. So I definitely recommend you look at both of those. I've really gotten very kind of excited about the idea of what could you do with these characters, and what could you do with this game besides, you know, just running around doing the roles, doing the missions. That just feels kind of, I don't know, it's getting a little bit flat, and I'm excited to have a new role come out, because I feel like I log on because I have to keep up my daily challenge streak, and I do stuff for maybe an hour or two in the morning before everybody else gets up. And mostly it's about, you know, let's do a moonshine run or two, and then let's, you know, do challenges, go whatever collectibles I need to collect for challenges, whatever, you know, fish I need to catch for challenges, whatever town I need to visit, whatever store I need to, or whatever weird thing I need to do. I try to do a bunch of them, and there's 19 challenges every day. I usually do I don't know, 8 of them or so. I usually, at the end of the day, I have somewhere between 10 and 13 left that I didn't want to do because they involve doing something in showdown modes, or they involve doing something that's time consuming enough that I don't want to do it. So, you know, that's kind of what I do, and I enjoy it well enough, but I'm looking for something new to do. One of the things I'm looking just to kind of mix up my gameplay, actually, is move my Moonshine Shack. And that's probably something I should have mentioned with my Moonshine review too, is there are several shack locations. It's generally considered that some are better than others. I picked Tall Trees, and I did that kind of on a whim, because I felt like I wasn't very familiar with Tall Trees, hadn't really spent a lot of time there, so if I stuck my Moonshine Shack there, it would give me an excuse to go there. But at the time I was keeping my camp in the Heartlands, and I preferred my camp in the Heartlands, so I kind of had to run between them a little bit more than I would have liked. One of the reasons people like Tall Trees is because it's literally right around the corner from Manzanita Post, and there's a fast travel post at Manzanita Post. If you do Tall Trees, there's a number of places that you make your moonshine deliveries, and all of them are very close. There's 2 locations in Blackwater, the saloon and the camp. There's Thieves Landing, there's Quaker's Cove, there's the so-called shack, which is actually the shack at Fort Riggs, so you have to cross the river and go, you know, up, down, and then up the ravine to get to that one. There's the cabin, which is in Aurora Basin, just that little cabin right on the lake with the dock that's kind of half sunken. And there's McFarland Ranch, and I don't think I'm missing any. There's also, the last one is the Homestead, which is actually a building right next to the Strawberry Stables. So, you know, as you can see, none of them are really that far away, and they're relatively easy to get to, and for the most part, you know, you drive around in the forest for just a moment or two, and then you're kind of out crossing the plains. And for 2 of them, you have to cross the river. Well, for 3 of them, because for McFarland Ranch, you cross another river, although that one's not as steep and rough. So I kind of like that one, and it's also keeps me close to Blackwater. I finally got around to moving my camp to the Great Plains, and unfortunately, because the Great Plains seems to be a very popular place to put your camp, I would occasionally get bumped because the Great Plains would be full and all the campsites taken or whatever, and I would have to go somewhere else. And so I've now moved my camp to Hennigan's Stead. I'm actually thinking about moving my Moonshine Shack from Tall Trees to Hennigan's Stead, both because now that's a place that I don't know quite as well. It's a little more remote. I really like the scenery of it. It's Hennigan's Stead really is kind of my ideal scenery. It reminds me a lot of Texas, where I grew up. Although it doesn't look exactly like the part of Texas I grew up in, but I got around. Henniganstead, I think, would be really... And then, it'll also mean my camp and my moonshine shack will be in the same region. Plus, it'll give me an excuse to spend more time kind of down in New Austin. I'll probably be as close to Armadillo most of the time as I will be to Blackwater, if not closer. So I might kind of get drawn more into that orbit to do my shopping and to do my, whatever else I need to do in town. Maybe I'll do it a lot more in Armadillo, although Armadillo does not have a stable. So there's that. But I'm thinking about doing that. The other locations, there's one up in the Grizzlies, and it's kind of right next to Cat's Hell Pond. This one is not only really remote, which in some ways is a good thing, but it also means that you have to drive your wagon on some narrow and very rough and very steep roads, which is usually seen as undesirable. There's another one that's in the Heartlands, although it's a little bit northeast of Emerald Ranch, so although it's in the Heartlands, it's probably as close to Annesburg as it is, almost as close to Annesburg as it is to Emerald Ranch. So your destinations, again, will be driving on you'll often be driving on some really kind of bad, windy, steep roads with a wagon that has cargo in it that can be easily damaged. So that's not ideal. The one that a lot of people really like is the Bayou, not only because it's relatively flat, although there are a lot of trees you can run into if you're not careful, but also because a lot of the ingredients that you use in your moonshine are right in the area. The vanilla flowers are right there, the evergreen huckleberries. There's a bush literally right outside the door of your cabin, for example. I'm not really a fan of that one as much because I don't love the Bayou, and it kind of probably takes you, I don't know what the destinations are for deliveries, but I imagine that Saint Denis is one of them. When I'm in Lemoyne, I kind of prefer to turn to Rhodes and stay out of Saint Denis as much as possible if I can. I like Rhodes a lot, actually. But I'm not a huge fan of the Bayou. If there was a moonshine shack in Scarlet Meadows, I would seriously consider that one, though. But not the Bayou. I don't want to be in the Bayou. I think it's in Bayou Noir. Maybe it's in Blue Water Marsh. It's kind of right on the border between the two. I don't know which region it technically counts as being in. But so anyway, those are the locations. And like I said, I'm giving serious thought to moving to Henniganstead. I previously said that I feel like I don't really have enough reason to go into New Austin, and it's kind of a shame because it's much more iconic Western scenery. But if I kind of keep my camp either in Henniganstead itself or in Rio Bravo, and then I also move my moonshine shack to the Henniganstead one, which I really love the location just from a scenic perspective. I don't know where the deliveries are. And people complain that moving your shack costs a lot of money. It costs $250. I don't actually think $250 is that much. I routinely blow $250 on stupider things than moving my shack. So I think I'm probably going to buy the horse that I mentioned. I'm probably going to move my shack. I'll probably leave my shack there for a while at least. Even if I end up not liking it as much as Tall Trees, I'll probably leave it there long enough to really feel like I got my money's worth out of the move. And I kind of want to, like I said, move the orbit of my gaming a little bit further south. I'm finding also that as I'm doing more and more with outfits, and I've got a lot of clothes now I've picked up, that most of them end up being hot weather outfits without me going to specific pains to make them average or cold. So, being more in either the south or the southeast or the southwest, one of the two, is probably desirable because then I can use my outfits a little bit more. So, anyway, that's kind of my